Heavenly Life by James Allen. Chapter 5. The Might of Meekness. The mountain bends not to the fiercest storm, but it shields the fledgling and the lamb, and though all men tread upon it, yet it protects them, and bears them up upon its deathless bosom. Even so is it with the meek man, who, though shaken and disturbed by none, yet compassionately bends to shield the lowliest creature, and, though he may be despised, lifts up all men, and lovingly protects them. As glorious as the mountain in its silent might is the divine man in his silent meekness. Like its form, his loving comparison is expansive and sublime. Truly his body, like the mountain's base, is fixed in the valleys and the mists, but the summit of his being is eternally bathed in cloudless glory, and lives with the silences. He who has found meekness has found divinity. He who has realized the divine consciousness and knows himself is divine. He also knows all others as divine, though they know it not themselves, being asleep and dreaming. Meekness is a divine quality, and as such is all-powerful. The meek man overcomes by not resisting, and by allowing himself to be defeated, he attains to the supreme conquest. The man who conquers another by force is strong. The man who conquers himself by meekness is mighty. He who conquers another by force will himself likewise be conquered. He who conquers himself by meekness will never be overthrown, for the human cannot overcome the divine. The meek man is triumphant in defeat. Socrates lives the more by being put to death. In the crucified Jesus, the risen Christ is revealed, and Stephen, in receiving his stoning, defies the hurting power of stones. That which is real cannot be destroyed, but only that which is unreal. When a man finds that within him which is real, which is constant, abiding, changeless, and eternal, he enters into that reality and becomes meek. All the powers of darkness will come against him, but they will do him no hurt, and will at last depart from him. The meek man is found in the time of trial. When other men fall, he stands. His patience is not destroyed by the foolish passions of others, and when they come against him, he does not strive or cry. He knows the utter powerlessness of all evil, having overcome it in himself, and lives in the changeless strength and power of divine good. Meekness is one aspect of the operation of that changeless love which is at the heart of all things, and is therefore an imperishable quality. He who lives in it is without fear, knowing the highest and having the lowest under his feet. The meek man shines in darkness and flourishes in obscurity. Meekness cannot boast nor advertise itself, nor thrive on popularity. It is practiced, and is seen or not seen. Being a spiritual quality, it is perceived only by the eye of the Spirit. Those who are not spiritually awakened see it not, nor do they love it, being enamored of and blinded by worldly shows and appearances. Nor does history take note of the meek man. Its glory is that of strife and self-aggrandizement. His is the glory of peace and gentleness. History chronicles the earthly, not the heavenly acts. Yet though he lives in obscurity, he cannot be hidden. How can light be hid? He continues to shine after he has withdrawn himself from the world, and is worshipped by the world, which knew him not. That the meek man should be neglected, abused, or misunderstood is reckoned by him as of no account, and therefore not to be considered, much less resisted. He knows that all such weapons are the flimsiest and most ineffectual of shadows. To them, therefore, who give him evil, he gives good. He resists none, and thereby conquers all. He who imagines he can be injured by others, and who seeks to justify and defend himself against them, does not understand meekness, does not comprehend the essence and meaning of life. He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. Those who harbor such thoughts, hatred will never cease. For hatred ceases not by hatred at any time. Hatred ceases by love. What do you say? Your neighbor has spoken of you falsely? Well, what of that? Can a falsity hurt you? That which is false, and there is an end of it. It is without life and without power to hurt any but him who seeks to hurt by it. It is nothing to you that your neighbor should speak falsely of you, but it is much to you that you should resist him and seek to justify yourself, for by so doing you give life and vitality to your neighbor's falseness, so that you are injured and distressed. Take all evil out of your own heart, then shall you see the folly of resisting it in another. You will be trodden on? You are trodden on already if you think thus. The injury that you see as coming from another comes only from yourself. The wrong thought or word or act of another has no power to hurt you unless you galvanize it into life by your passionate resistance, and so receive it into yourself. If any man slander me, that is his concern, not mine. I have to do with my own soul, not with my neighbor's. Though all the world misjudge me, it is no business of mine. But that I should possess my soul in purity and love, that is all my business. There shall be no end to strife until men cease to justify themselves. He who would have wars cease, let him cease to defend any party. Let him cease to defend himself. Not by strife can peace come, but by ceasing from strife. The glory of Caesar resides in the resistance of his enemies. They resist and fall. Give to Caesar that which Caesar demands, and Caesar's glory and power are gone. Thus, by submission does the meek man conquer the strong man. But it is not that outward show of submission which is slavery. It is that inward and spiritual submission which is freedom. Claiming no rights, the meek man is not troubled with self-defense and self-justification. He lives in love, and therefore comes under the immediate and vital protection of the great love, which is the eternal law of the universe. He neither claims nor seeks his own. Thus do all things come to him, and all the universe shields and protects him. He who says, I have tried meekness and it has failed, has not tried meekness. It cannot be tried as an experiment. It is only arrived at by unreserved self-sacrifice. Meekness does not consist merely in non-resistance in action. It consists preeminently in non-resistance in thought, in ceasing to hold or to have any selfish, condemnatory, or retaliatory thoughts. The meek man, therefore, cannot take offense, or have his feelings hurt, living above hatred, folly, and vanity. Meekness can never fail. O you who search for the heavenly life, strive after meekness. Increase your patience and forbearance day by day. Bid your tongue cease from all harsh words. Withdraw your mind from selfish arguments, and refuse to brood upon your wrongs. So living, you shall carefully tend and cultivate the pure and delicate flower of meekness in your heart, until at last its divine sweetness and purity and beauteous perfection shall be revealed to you, and you shall become gentle, joyful, and strong. Repine not that you are surrounded by irritable and selfish people, but rather rejoice that you are so favored as to have your own imperfections revealed to you, and that you are so placed as to necessitate within you a constant struggle for self-mastery and the attainment of perfection. The more there is of harshness and selfishness around you, the greater is the need of your meekness and love. If others seek to wrong you, all the more it is needful that you should cease from all wrong and live in love. If others preach meekness, humility, and love, and do not practice these, trouble not, nor be annoyed. But you, in the silence of your own heart, and in your contact with others, practice these things, and they shall preach themselves. And though you utter no declamatory word, and stand before no gathered audience, you shall teach the whole world. As you become meek, you shall learn the deepest secrets of the universe. Nothing is hidden from him who overcomes himself. Into the cause of causes you shall penetrate, and lifting one after another every veil of illusion, shall reach at last the inmost heart of being. Thus becoming one with life, you shall know all life, and seeing into causes and knowing realities, you shall be no more anxious about yourself and others and the world, but shall see that all things that are engines of the great law. Canopied with gentleness, you shall bless where others curse, love where others hate, forgive where others condemn, yield where others strive, give up where others grasp, lose where others gain. And in their strength they shall be weak, and in your weakness you shall be strong. Yea, you shall mightily prevail. He that has not unbroken gentleness has not truth. Therefore, when heaven would save a man, it enfolds him with gentleness. Chapter 6. The Righteous Man. The righteous man is invincible. No enemy can possibly overcome or confound him. He needs no other protection than that of his own integrity and holiness. As it is impossible for evil to overcome good, so the righteous man can never be brought low by the unrighteous. Slander, envy, hatred, malice can never reach him, nor cause him any suffering, and those who try to injure him can only succeed ultimately in bringing ignominy upon themselves. The righteous man, having nothing to hide, committing no acts which require stealth, and harboring no thoughts and desires which he would not like others to know, is fearless and unashamed. His step is firm, his body upright, and his speech direct and without ambiguity. He looks everybody in the face. How can he fear any who wrongs none? How can he be ashamed before any who deceives none? And ceasing from all wrong, he can never be wronged. Ceasing from all deceit, he can never be deceived. The righteous man, performing all his duties with scrupulous diligence and living above sin, is invulnerable at every point. He who has slain the inward enemies of virtue can never be brought low by any outward enemy. Neither does he need to seek any protection against them, righteousness being an all-sufficient protection. The unrighteous man is vulnerable at almost every point, living in his passions, the slave of prejudices, impulses, and ill-formed opinions. He is continually suffering, as he imagines, at the hands of others. The slanders, attacks, and accusations of others cause him great suffering because they have a basis of truth in himself, and not having the protection of righteousness, he endeavors to justify and protect himself by resorting to retaliation and specious argument, and even to subterfuge and deceit. The partially righteous man is vulnerable at all those points where he falls short of righteousness, and should the righteous man fall from his righteousness and give way to one sin, his invincibility is gone, for he has thereby placed himself where attack and accusation can justly reach and injure him, because he has first injured himself. If a man suffers or is injured through the instrumentality of others, let him look to himself, and, putting aside self-pity and self-defense, he will find in his own heart the source of all his woe. No evil can happen to the righteous man who has cut off the source of evil in himself, living in the all-good, and abstaining from sin in thought, word, and deed, whatever happens to him is good. Neither can any person, event, or circumstance cause him suffering, for the tyranny of circumstance is utterly destroyed for him who has broken the bonds of sin. The suffering, the sorrowing, the weary, and broken-hearted ever seek a sorrowless refuge, a haven of perpetual peace. Let such fly to the refuge of the righteous life. Let them come now and enter the haven of the sinless state, for sorrow cannot overtake the righteous. Suffering cannot reach him who does not waste in self-seeking his spiritual substance, and he cannot be afflicted by weariness and unrest, whose heart is at peace with all. Chapter 7. Perfect Love. The children of light who abide in the kingdom of heaven see the universe and all that it contains as the manifestation of one law, the law of love. They see love as the molding, sustaining, protecting, and perfecting power immanent in all things animate and inanimate. To them, love is not merely and only a rule of life, it is the law of life. It is life itself. Knowing this, they order their whole life in accordance with love, not regarding their own personality. By thus practicing obedience to the highest, to the divine love, they become conscious partakers of the power of love, and so arrive at perfect freedom as masters of destiny. The universe is preserved because love is at the heart of it. Love is the only preservative power. Whilst there is hatred in the heart of man, he imagines law to be cruel, but when his heart is mellowed by compassion and love, he perceives that the law is infinite kindness. So kind is the law that it protects man against his own ignorance. Man, in his puny efforts to subvert the law by attaching undue importance to his own little personality, brings upon himself such trains of suffering that he is at last compelled, in the depths of his afflictions, to seek for wisdom. And finding wisdom, he finds love, and knows it as the law of his being, the law of the universe. Love does not punish. Man punishes himself by his own hatred. By striving to preserve evil which has no life by which to preserve itself, and by trying to subvert love which can neither be overcome nor destroyed, being of the substance of life. When a man burns himself, does he accuse the fire? Therefore, when a man suffers, let him look for some ignorance or disobedience within himself. Love is perfect harmony, pure bliss, and contains therefore no element of suffering. Let a man think no thought and do no act which is not in accordance with pure love, and suffering shall no more trouble him. If a man would know love and partake of its undying bliss, he must practice it in his heart. He must become love. He who always acts from the spirit of love is never deserted, is never left in a dilemma or difficulty, for love, impersonal love, is both knowledge and power. He who has learned how to love has learned how to master every difficulty, how to transmute every failure into success, how to clothe every event and condition in garments of blessedness and beauty. The way to love is by self-mastery, and, traveling that way, a man builds himself up in knowledge as he proceeds. Arriving at love, he enters into full possession of body and mind by right of the divine power. Perfect love casteth out fear. To know love is to know that there is no harmful power in the whole universe. Even sin itself, which the worldly and unbelieving imagine is so unconquerable, is known as a very weak and perishable thing that shrinks away and disappears before the compelling power of good. Perfect love is perfect harmlessness, and he who has destroyed in himself all thoughts of harm and all desire to harm receives the universal protection and knows himself to be invincible. Perfect love is perfect patience. Anger and irritability cannot dwell with it nor come near it. It sweetens every bitter occasion with the perfume of holiness and transmutes trial into divine strength. Complaint is foreign to it. He who loves bewails nothing, but accepts all things and conditions as heavenly guests. He is therefore constantly blessed, and sorrow does not overtake him. Perfect love is perfect trust. He who has destroyed the desire to grasp can never be troubled with the fear of loss. Loss and gain are alike foreign to him. Steadfastly maintaining a lovable attitude of mind toward all, and pursuing in the performance of his duties a constant and loving activity, love protects him and evermore supplies him in fullest measure with all that he needs. Perfect love is perfect power. The wise, loving heart commands without exercising any authority. All things and all men obey him who obeys the highest. He thinks, and lo, he has already accomplished. He speaks, and behold, a world hangs upon his simple utterances. He has harmonized his thoughts with the imperishable and unconquerable forces, and for him weakness and uncertainty are no more. His every thought is a purpose, his every act an accomplishment. He moves with the great law, not setting his puny personal will against it, and he thus becomes a channel through which the divine power can flow in unimpeded and beneficent expression. He has thus become power itself. Perfect love is perfect wisdom. The man who loves all is the man who knows all. Having thoroughly learned the lessons of his own heart, he knows the tasks and trials of other hearts, and adapts himself to them gently and without ostentation. Love illuminates the intellect. Without it, the intellect is blind and cold and lifeless. Love succeeds where intellect fails, sees where intellect is blind, knows where intellect is ignorant. Reason is only completed in love, and is ultimately absorbed in it. Love is the supreme reality in the universe, and as such it contains all truth. Infinite tenderness enfolds and cherishes the universe. Therefore is the wise man gentle and childlike and tender-hearted. He sees that the one thing which all creatures need is love, and he gives it unstintingly. He knows that all occasions require the adjusting power of love, and he ceases from harshness. To the eye of love, all things are revealed, not as an infinity of complex effects, but in the light of eternal principles out of which spring all causes and effects, and back into which they return. God is love. Therefore, than love, there is nothing more perfect. He who would find pure knowledge, let him find pure love. Perfect love is perfect peace. He who dwells with it has completed his pilgrimage in the underworld of sorrow. With mind calm and heart at rest, he has banished the shadows of grief and knows the deathless life. If you would perfect yourself in knowledge, perfect yourself in love. If you would reach the highest, ceaselessly cultivate a loving and compassionate heart.